here at Crafty Hope, and welcome to my next Seek, Gather, Create project. It is the newest season of Seek, Gather, Create, which is a mixed media scavenger hunt that takes place on Instagram, but here I am on YouTube doing it just to share with you what is going on. In fact, I don't even have my little sheet of paper that tells me all the information. Oh my gosh, I am so unprepared right now. Other than the fact that I have prepped this. So this is a challenge that happens about twice a year in the winter and the summer. And it is hosted by three artists, Lisa Goddard, Tina Hoyce, and Laura Dennison. And this season, each week, they have a guest artist. I believe this week is Crafty Sherry. I'm not positive. Definitely go check out the Seek, Gather, Create profile on Instagram or any of the hostesses. I'll have all that down below in the description box. So make sure to go do that. But basically, each week on a Sunday, they put out 4 prompts for you to seek and gather and then create with. And I love this because it feeds my assemblage mixed media soul. And yeah, it's always I always make some of my favorite things in this challenge. So, let me think if I can remember what all we were supposed to get. So the first prompt is kind of a wacky one, and it is remember. So my first thought was photos, because photos are how we remember things that happened, events that went on. So these are actually photocopies of some vintage photos I found in my stash. This is the one I'm leaning toward, of these two girls who look like they're at like prom or something. I really like that. Let's see, another prompt is a window. So I went and laser cut. I know I didn't seek or gather it, but I sought out I don't know. Anyway, I created these windows out of 1/4 inch plywood on my laser cutter, and I was gonna just use one of them, but then I stacked. You can see these two are like thicker here and these two are thinner. I stacked these two up and realized I really kind of like that 3D effect I got from them, so I may end up doing that. The color is pink, so I thought embroidery floss, of course, and then while I was getting it, I was like, oh yeah, buttons. So I grabbed some pink buttons, and then a hand. So I do have a collection of doll parts in my stash. I picked them up, most of them at the Habitat Restore, like, y'all, I don't even know how long ago, before I even started doing assemblage art. And then lately, there's a certain store that I'll find them in every now and then as well. So, but I've also thought a hand could be so many things, like a clock hand. And then you think about hand and remember. And have you seen the icon with a finger, the old adage where you tie a ribbon on your finger so you don't forget something? And a hand, tied on a hand. So I went and specifically looked for a hand that had separated fingers, and this was about the only one I had. So I'm fairly sure, well, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'll tell you in the voiceover if I do it or not. But I like to work inside like a Shadowbox or something like this. This is just a box from the Dollar Tree. It has these little label things on the side. I may take those off. I've done it in the past and just fill the holes. So, what do I usually fill the holes with? I may have to fill it with some, I don't know, something. I gotta think on that. Some putty. I don't know if I have any putty. Oh, my cat's hollering. Do you hear her? So anyway, you'll see all that, but I think I'm gonna use this box and mostly these things and create something new and interesting that didn't exist in the world before. So let's get to it. Hey, and if these things interest you and this whole challenge interests you, go check it out on Instagram. Make sure you hit those links below. And if you want to see more from me, I do have a Patreon. Yeah. All right, guys, let's get crafty. I did decide to go ahead and remove those little labels on there, and that's going to cause an issue down the line. As far as the outside, of the box goes for this challenge. I'm only gonna like quickly go through it because this was more about what I added to the inside, and this video was super long. This process wasn't, I don't know, it took me a day, less than a day to do it, but yeah. So I'm gonna speed through some of the parts of it because it kind of fell together exactly the way I felt it would in my head. So I did take off those labels, like I said. I filled the holes with a little bit of, this is some texture paste made with plaster of Paris and gesso. It was not the best solution because it ends up, leaving a mark, and I end up having to cover that up, and we'll get to that. So to thicken up, because I just photocopied these on some photo paper, I decided to go ahead and back it with something thicker, give it a little bit of bulk, and this is some craft paper cardstock, and I'm sticking it down with gloss gel medium. And the only reason I'm using the gloss is because I don't use the gloss on anything that I like to have on top of something. I don't like glossy things. So since I knew this was going to be hidden behind the picture, that's what I used. And I set it aside to dry. It's actually underneath that iron as a weight. Then I cut down another piece of that craft cardstock and picked out some papers to collage on it. And I'm going to take those to my guillotine cutter and cut them into strips, just like that. That transition didn't work great, but that square is also cut down to size to fit inside of my box. So using just my Uhu glue stick, I am going to stick down these strips of different papers. I tried to get a mix of papers that felt like they belonged in history or made you think about history or had something that you might want to remember on them. So there's like bits of old writing, and that's an eco print. I did pick out, what else did I pick out? Some things with, lots of old handwriting and dates and numbers and things like that. I had a strip of painted paper that just happened to be sitting nearby, and it had pink in it. So I was like, ooh, that pink would be really nice, since one of the prompts is pink, to bring in, to kind of have that color also elsewhere on this background. And I knew this was just going to be a background, some way to add some texture to the back of the box that I'm putting all of these things in. So just stripes of all of these, and I'm only sticking them down. It was about halfway through the process. I was like, I probably should have used like a matte gel medium or a fluid medium or something like that, but it's okay. I got it all down, and you saw I wasn't real fussy about the length of them. One of them I think was too short, and I just used another piece of it to extend it, because a lot of this is going to be hidden in the background anyway. So once it was all glued down, I just cut the excess off real quick, and then I did dry it with the heat tool because some of it still felt pretty tacky. So once it was dry, I'm going to add a little pizzazz to it and use my Uhu glue stick and some gold foil flakes. These I pick up at Dollar Tree, y'all. They're not like really nice gold leafing, but again, this is just going in the background. It was a way for me to add a touch of something. Like I said, I was fairly sure I was going to use that picture of those two girls, and since they're in formal fancy dresses, I wanted them to have a little something special in the background, something that felt kind of feminine and I don't know, fancy. Fancy's the best word. So I'm gonna speed through this real quick. As you can see, I'm putting my Uhu down and then laying down that gold foil to give it a chance to dry before I try to brush off the excess. I'm also doing Uhu and then adding the foil, because if I tried to do several spots of the Uhu and then come back, I'd never find them. I would totally lose them. Because it'd be like, oh no, which spot did I put that in? So once I get all of that down and it's had a second to dry, I'm coming in with with a paintbrush that's kind of bristly, but not too bristly, to push it back. Now, I didn't mind if it scraped away some of the areas as well, because I wanted this to feel a little rough and worn and aged, and something you should be remembering. So once I brushed it away, I could see that I wanted a little bit more in a couple other spots. Y'all, this is the only thing about working with this stuff. It was all kinds of stuck to my finger. Do you see my right finger? Is covered with gold foil flakes. So I'm gonna finish that up, and once I get finish scraping that away, and then I'm coming back in with some gesso. Now, big admission, this gesso is just some regular Liquitex gesso that has been in that pepper container. I upcycle all kinds of stuff, and it has thickened up, and it is a consistency that I love it. So I've been using it a lot, especially in this method, to like scrape around and just so I have a thick gesso. And I'm using, you can see, 2 different palette knives to kind of put it down. It's move it around. I'm also using my finger. I'm just having a really good time making a big mess of this. So, and for the most part, that's going to be my background. I'm going to ink it up later, but I didn't add any coffee to this. I've been really into the paper artsy infusions lately. I didn't add any of those. I really wanted that to just be a background. Now at this point, my picture of my girls has had plenty of time to dry, so I'm going to go ahead and cut off that excess frame, kind of take a look at it, and I think I'm going to go ahead and ink up the edges of this. And I do wish, you'll see later, I do wish I had gone ahead and inked up the edges of that background as well, but it was drying. So I held off and was like, oh, I'll remember to do it. What do you think is going to happen? So once I got them inked up, I knew it was time to bring in that embroidery floss. So I looked at them for a while, trying to figure out where I wanted to put this pink embroidery floss down. And I decided that to just add some accent to the girl on the left's dress. So I'm going to make French knots with it, which is like one of my absolute favorite things. So I'll try to talk you through this real quick. But if you have questions about French knots, let me know. So when it's something thick like this, I like to go ahead and pre-poke a hole and pull my needle through. Then I wrap my thread 2 or 3 times around my needle. In this case, it's going to be 2 times. And kind of pull that tail tight to make that knot. And then reinsert my needle in a different spot. Very close to the initial hole, but a different spot. To kind of keep it stable, it tacks it down. So again, you pull your needle up, you wrap your thread around, you poke your hole back through, pulling that tail tight, and then you pull your thread all the way through. And I'm going to do this over and over and over again. A couple reminders about French knots, that the more times you wrap it, the thicker, bigger your knots are going to be. Also, you can break if you want them really small, but you still want to wrap 2 or 3 times. You can break down your embroidery floss, of course. So, I thought I had sped this up a little bit, but maybe I didn't. This is feeling kind of painful. So, I am doing, you can see kind of how separated that is all feeling. I kept stopping and looking at it going, is this what I had in mind? I'm not sure if this is what I had in mind. So once I go all the way across her waistband, I'm going to do another row just above these. And I am going to cut that down so you don't have to painfully watch me do these knots. But I'm going to kind of get all the way across, and then once I start to do that upper row, I'm going to cut out here. And I really love, I don't know, and I'm not a pink girl, so anytime Lisa and Tina and Laura use pink in this challenge, I'm like, oh no. Because I'm not a pink girl, but I always tend to make things that I really like, and I think that's what I really like about Seek, Gather, Create, is it encourages me to use things that I might not think of pulling in. It also makes me like dip into my stash and find things or make things I might not have thought to use. So I always get these like really surprising results. Now, this challenge cracked me up because I actually, as soon as I saw these 4 prompts, I kind of had a vision of what I wanted to create, and this came together almost exactly as I had envisioned. There's a couple little hiccups, like I didn't know what the background was going to be until I was like, oh, what should I make for a background before I do all these other things? But yeah. Um, so I was surprised. So as you saw there, I did all the way across, and I started thinking about the girl that was on the right of that picture. And I was like, I'll come back to it. Let me work on the outside of this box because I know it's going to need to dry. So for the kind of a little bit on the inside, all the inner walls, the front of the box, and the entire outside area, with the exception of the back, I used an antiquing wax. I think it's a folk art antiquing wax to cover it, along with the larger of the 2 window pane frames. So they're all getting a coat of that wax, and I usually just paint it on and then I wipe it off with a paper towel. Now for the front of the frame, the smaller of the 2 frames, the one that's going to be stacked on top, I started with some black gesso because I knew I was going to add some gold, and but it needed something primer for the gold, so the gold didn't just like soak into the wood. Yeah. So once I get all of these things painted, I think I'm going to go ahead and put them aside and let them all dry while I go back to my girls. And so that girl on the right, I decided she also needed like something special on her waistband. So I used my background that I had already made as inspiration, and I had a blue-green color in there, and that kind of goes well with that pink. So I was like, well, that's what I'm going to use. So I just happened to have this bit of like pale blue-green embroidery floss in my pen cushion on my desk. And so I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to use. It works out perfectly. And I am just doing little like up and down stitches all the way across her waistband, because there's like a defined ribbon that's her waistband on there, and I'm just covering that up. So I'm not going to make you watch all of that. Oh, actually, maybe I am. I'm going to let you see a lot of it. I didn't think it. Yeah, y'all, this video was almost 2 hours long when I started, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this cut down to make it easier for y'all to digest and for me to really finish this video. So some of this is, yeah, it's for both of us, for our benefit. So this video isn't painful for everybody involved. So I'm going to get all the way across her band. And then I'm going to turn the card, once I get that last stitch in there, I'm going to turn it over and just insert my needle underneath all of those stitches, and not even bother tying it off because I'm going to glue it down. So I'm going to trim up all the excess of the thread. And then these little girls, I thought they were done, but I was like, you know what? I need to add like some rosy cheeks or something. So here's my first oopsie. I grabbed an alcohol, like a cheap alcohol marker, and y'all, apparently glossy photo paper does not like alcohol markers because it ate away the glossy thing. Like you can't hardly see it in here. It ate it up. And I was like, that is not going to work. So I was like, okay, I'll just use some acrylic paint. So I grabbed this pale pink acrylic paint and put it on their cheeks. And it did a good job. It covered up where the paper had been eaten away by the alcohol. And, yeah, which is weird because don't you use like alcohol inks on glossy photo paper to make like, I don't know. I thought that was like a regular thing, but anyway, those alcohol markers did not work. Once I got that pink acrylic paint down, I was like, this is not the right color. It does not show up. It's too sweet. I need this to be a little more something something. So I grabbed some of my watercolor markers and this bright pink one, and well, that, I don't, went a little bit awry. I really should have tested this. And the whole time I was telling myself, this was a photocopy. I can go make another photocopy. I can redo all of these things. But I was like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to redo the stitching. So I was like, let's make it work. So they're a little clown-like, but I think it kind of draws your attention to their faces. So I did add water to kind of move that marker around, and the ink that was left on my little tiny paintbrush, I did put on their lips as well to give them some color. And I think it draws your eye to their faces a little bit more, and I think that was fun. So it was kind of a happy mistake. It was an oopsie for sure. It was a learning experience. Hopefully I learned that lesson. But yeah, it worked out. It was just a happy accident. So here's where I am using just a little bit of gold paint to paint my other whatchamacallit, my other window pane. So here you can see how that technique I used with my texture paste did not work on with the antiquing wax, and it had to be covered up. So I'm using white chalk paint to go over this, but I don't believe my antiquing wax was completely dry. You can see how kind of some of that brown is soaking into my white. So I'm going to do all 4 sides of that outside, let it dry, and then I did a second little, and I didn't cover it up completely. It was definitely like a scratchy covering of everything. So, and I didn't want you to painfully have to watch me just kind of lightly paint the outside of that box. So to stick my background in, I am just using some wood glue. This is the point where I realized I had not inked up my background. So I put my wood glue down, which gave it too much time to kind of start to dry, because that wood glue does not take long. And I wish I'd put down just a little bit more as well. But it's all going to work out, guys. It's going to be fine. This, like I said, this thing came together really beautifully. So once I got my glue in there, made sure it touched all the edges. I'm looking to make sure everything looks okay. And then I just slip in my square of background page. And I have to tell you, this background page I love so much. And I think it had a lot to do with curating the papers a little bit and using things that I really love. And I don't know why I have to learn that lesson over and over again. If I'm going to create things I love, I have to use things that I love. So while that, I let that dry and came back and decided to deal with my picture, and I'm using Beacon 3-in-1 to stick down to make sure all my threads in the back are secure. And then the thread that is still hanging off, I also secured it down. Now I knew I wanted this photo kind of lifted from the background. So those are cheap tumbling tower blocks, which is, yeah, the Dollar Tree version of that classic block stacking game. And I started sizing everything up, trying to decide exactly where my placement of everything's going to be. And then I'm going to glue. So I grabbed my wood glue again. I think that's what, yeah. I grabbed my wood glue again because I'm gluing these tumbling tower blocks to my piece of cardstock there, and then wood to wood glue my frame together. So, and I am putting 3 of these down just to kind of make sure it's got a nice even coverage. And yeah, and I really have been getting a lot of use out of that. That's a glue spreading tool. I think you can get it at most hardware stores with the wood glues. My husband picked that up for me, and I love the thing. So yeah, using it here, putting my cheap wood glue right onto it. Yeah. So I'm gonna stick that on there, and as you can see, I'm weighing these pieces down, but it really didn't take long at all for them to all stick together. Yeah, wood glue is a fabulous thing. And my husband says that the using wood glue actually makes your wood stronger. Like it is then stronger than the wood itself. So, yeah, he swears by wood glue. He likes the Tight Bond 2, which is probably what I'll link to in the description box below with my other materials that I'll share with you. So once all of that had dried, things are starting to get real nervous for me. I'm like, okay, I've got to stick this stuff in here. What if I don't stick it in the right places? What if I don't like where I stick it? It's okay. It's like I said, it's my vision. These are all things that, it's one of those things I keep telling myself. I created that window frame. All of these are scrap papers and scrap wood. I mean, the box itself only cost $1.25 at Dollar Tree. None of this is precious except for maybe that baby doll hand. And as such, it's going to be like the last thing I stick in this box. So yeah. So more wood glue on the tumbling tower blocks before I stick them in. I was trying to be really careful not to get that embroidery floss stuck up in it as well. So I'm going to weigh those down, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and I decided, because I want a little bow, like a ribbon bow, like the image I showed you on the finger. I took some more of that embroidery floss and made a little bow, and I'm going to, pull the ends to get it smaller and smaller. It made me feel very like late 80s, early 90s. Something about a little bow like this just makes me think of like when I was in elementary school and middle school. So wood glue for the frame itself, and I'm just putting it on two sides, spreading it out again with that glue spreader, and I'm gonna use, I thought I was gonna use my clothespins to hold the frame in place, but I end up having these other I don't know what you would call them, binder clips of some kind that opened just a little bit wider. So I could have gone, if I had some forethought, and gotten some kind of vise or something from my husband, but it worked out. My method worked. I didn't have to go into the wood shop and get stuff. So again, that didn't take very long at all to dry. It is super stable. I was really happy how stable it is in there. And then, y'all, what's next? It's gluing it down my hand. So I'm using E6000 to glue it down because it is a, ceramic doll hand. And so I'm putting that on fairly liberally, but I don't want it to ooze out too much because it will leave a shine underneath it, and it's going to. Some of it does ooze out at one, but I was able to fix it as long as I didn't have too much excess come out. And y'all aren't going to get to see me place it in there because I need the weight of gravity to hold it in place. So I left it for a little while, but not long enough as I start to do this. So I'm winding I'm trying to decide what direction I wanted the thread coming from, if I wanted it to come around the front or from the back of the finger. And I'm going to use some more of that Beacon 3-in-1 and a toothpick. I think I am. Oh, no, see here? My hand was starting to give a little bit, I think. Oh, no, I used the E6000, I guess. Okay, so I used the E6. I'm going to use the 3-in-1 in a little bit. So I used the toothpick to put some of the E6000 on the back of the finger, and then I am wrapping my embroidery floss. See there, you can see that hand is still moving. Wrapping that just lightly around, and I started to trim it, but I was like, no, let's wait until I get it fully wrapped. So once I get it fully wrapped, I am trimming it down. Everything's nice and dry. That I gave it a couple hours. That was the waiting time for that was the longest. And then I've got my little bow that I'm going to trim down, and then I'm going to use the Beacon 3-in-1 on a toothpick to add just the tiniest little dot. In fact, I have a little piece of like the back of a sticker that I'm putting the beacon on, so I can be super precise with it. Of course, it was flying everywhere. So I put that down with the toothpick, and then I'm using the other end of the toothpick to kind of press it into place. And y'all, that's it. That is it for this little assemblage box for Seek, Gather, Create. I y'all, I am so smitten with this. Like I said, it came together exactly how I'd envisioned. And to me it makes me think of, the background is kind of hazy, but those key things that were so instrumental in our lives, they kind of get framed up, and they may not be exactly in frame, but they're there and we remember them. And I don't know, this feels very sentimental to me. Oh yes, that glossy E6000 that was kind of showing there at the base of the hand. I added some matte gel medium there just to kind of push back that shine. Now I'm going to say that this may not be completely done. I may decide to do like something about around the base of the hand, or on the frame of the box, or even on the sides of the box later. But for now, I am so pleased with how this came together. I want to thank the hostesses for the 3 prompts, and for the 4 prompts, the 4 hostesses for the 4 prompts, and I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody else has done for this challenge. Let me know if you've played along and where I can find your contribution. All right, guys, I will see y'all later with more art and stuff and things. Thanks for watching. Bye.